Hi there, it's Sandra here from Creating Spain. Now, before you run away in fright because I'm working on an iPad, this design is easily done manually, or this type of design I should say is easily done manually. I'm doing it on my iPad because A, it makes it easier for me, and yeah, I just tend to do this kind of thing digitally because I'm not good at drawing straight lines and really nice smooth curved lines manually, and it's so easy to do digitally for me that tends to be the way that I do it. There are advantages to doing it digitally. Generally I use one of two apps to do my digital art. It is either going to be Procreate or it is going to be Concepts, and today I'm using Concepts. Now the reason for this is because Concepts has certain tools in it which are easily available, and they make doing this kind of drawing very, very easy. And they allow you to correct mistakes even if you don't spot them until much later. Yeah, because this depends on each individual line that you put in. This is definitely the easier option in the way of apps to work in. Having said that, if I want to do something else to it afterwards, like colour it and do effects on it, then I'll just copy it and paste it into Procreate and go from there. Now you can see at the moment the zoom is at 127%, so I can take this back down. That will be 100%. Or I could make it bigger to zoom in to whatever lines I want to zoom in. Now my little control wheel here on the left hand side gives me some options which are really handy for this kind of stuff. So I've got the line thickness at the moment, that's the line thickness. And because I'm demonstrating this, I will stick to that. If I was doing it for myself, I would normally take it down as far as I could take it, because that means I then know that all my points are joined where they should be joined. There won't be any gaps in any lines, and I can increase the whole size of the lines all in one go after I've finished if I want to. So the other thing which is really handy is the line straightening function, which is this one here, or what I usually refer to as the wobble factor. Now, at the moment, I can't draw anything but a straight line because it won't let me, because it's set to 100%. If I tap on that and take it down, I can put my wriggly lines in, but at 100%, I will have straight lines and nothing but straight lines, which is excellent. And to get rid of this lot, I can click on my selection tool, lasso it, and throw it in the bin. Or if I click down here, I can change to item picker. And item picker means that I can just tap on a line and delete it or alter it in whatever way I want to alter it. Now I want to go back to my line, so click on my line here. I've got it at 100%. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is to put a line around the frame. Whoops, hang on, I didn't do that very well, did I? I skipped, so. Just going to do some straight, whoops. See what I mean? Me and straight lines, we don't get on. And from this corner down to there. Oops, didn't get that on the corner. It's because I'm doing this on a desk and I'm not usually one for drawing like this. I tend to hold my iPad in one hand and draw with the other. Okay, so I have my frame in here, and I'm just going to split it up with some straight lines. Now I'm just going to go for a very simple version of this, so that's all I'm going to put in. However, if you want to make it more complicated, you can split it up a lot further. You can put in curved lines if you want to, that makes it a lot harder, but you can put in curved lines, no problem in that. So how do we go about doing these fancy linear designs, optical illusions, whatever you like to call them? It is so simple. Now one of the options on here is a snap option, and sometimes I use it and sometimes I don't. But the option I would have is auto complete. And that is simply going to make sure that if I tap to make a line somewhere, it's going to make sure it joins to the line which is nearest it. I'm going to click that off and do it without. I'm going to start off, actually I'll start off in this corner, and I'm going to do a line so that it is wider at this end than it is at that end. And then I'm going to go from there, and I'm going to have another line which joins. The gap here is roughly the same as the gap between those two lines here. And don't worry about this because I can take that off afterwards. So I now go from this point and do the same thing. As soon as I meet a line, I stop. And go from that point and again. And you're just going to repeat this over and over again. Now you can see why having the ability to draw a completely straight line and not have to worry about it is great in this. If I was doing this by hand, I would either have to accept that it was going to be not perfectly straight, or I'd have to be using a ruler for each of these lines. And believe me, I'm not going to do that. So in come, didn't quite manage to get it lining up with the other line, so I'm going to undo that one. There we go. And continue on. Now you can get some really amazing patterns by doing these without doing any actual physical, what I would class as proper drawing. And they're actually rather useful if you want to use them as backgrounds for card making, because you can put paint effects underneath this and get some great backgrounds, which are extremely good if you want cards for men, because a lot of background patterns tend to be either very simplistic shapes, circles, squares, etc., a bit boring perhaps, or they tend to be flowery, and you don't necessarily want to do flowery ones for guys. So this one is slightly different in that it's got more sides to it. And I'm going to start off at this end because I've got a wide bit there. If I go from that side to that side, it's going to look a bit the same. So I'm going to start off with this side, and I'm going to go over here, down to the next angle, across to this one. And you're literally just doing the same thing. Now, obviously, the smaller the gap you leave between your lines, the more elaborate this ends up looking. And you can do it wider at one end and narrower on the other side if you want to vary the way that it looks. So I could give really big gaps here and very tiny gaps here. Big gaps here, big gap there, tiny one there. You see what I mean? So you can vary the way that it looks. And you just keep going until you get to the center and you can't go any further. So this is really great if you are stressed out. It makes you concentrate because you have to think about where your lines are actually going. But on the other hand, once you get into the swing of this, you can do it quite fast, and it's quite relaxing. Now, you'll notice as I'm doing this, I'm not paying too much attention to where my lines are ending as long as they meet up, and I'm going to have some errors to correct. Now, if you were doing this by hand, you'd have to get in there with a small eraser. I would suggest an electric eraser. I have one. They're very, very cheap. It just goes round and round and round and round and round. But it's good for getting into small areas. A lot easier than using a traditional eraser. And I said this, I think, cost me about £5. several years ago, and I've seen them in the shops for €1 or €2 these days, and you just get little refills for it. Excellent tool. I'm going to quickly go in here and fill in some of the rest of it. As I said, I'm not being particularly careful on here, so it's not going to be the best version of this. This is just going to give you a rough idea of what happens. Now, of course, the other thing you can do with this, if you need to, is you can turn your design around. So for the last area, there we go. And you can zoom in and zoom out using this sort of stuff, which obviously if you're just using a sheet of paper, you can't do in quite the same way. So. Now these are also great exercises for colouring in if that's what you're into and you don't want to do the traditional sort of colouring pages. And of course, if you do these digitally, you can share them with your friends quite easily and they can pick which ones they like to colour. And indeed, I have done a whole load of designs of various sorts, colouring pages, and made those accessible via Dropbox. There we go, so that one is now pretty much done. But if I zoom in, you can see I've got a lot of messy stuff here. So I can come in with an eraser and I can clean this up quite considerably, relatively easily. I can also straighten my eraser, by the way, if I need to. There we go. My eraser isn't being straightened at the moment, but if I straighten it, I can only go in straight lines. And it will only do that. So if I needed to, I could. I don't tend to have a problem so much, erasing little bits without having it straightened. But when it comes to actual physical long lines, yes, I do have a problem. I needed the straightening tools. So you can do that. I did mention that I can also clean up things like this. With concepts, I can just select an item and shove it in the bin, or I can change it to lasso and I can take those and that's it, it's gone. The other thing is, if I haven't actually gone to a line, I can go back in with my line tool and I can put it back in if I need to do that. The other thing with concepts is that I can select the entire lot like that and change the line width to something else. Now, a word of caution on this. If you do it from a thick line to a thin line, you will probably find when you zoom in that you don't have your lines joined up. Because they were joined up when they were thick, because the thicker line looked like it was joined. But when it's made into a very fine line, it will be basically just where you stopped, where you picked up the pencil is where it stopped. And because it's finer, there's going to be gaps. So if you want to, by any chance, mess around with the size of it afterwards, I would suggest that you do a very fine line and then increase the thickness of the line later on if that's what you want to do. Obviously, if you're doing this on paper, you don't have that option unless you redraw the entire thing. So that's how you do these weird and wonderful designs. And if I come into here, now this here is the background basically for this design here. That's what I ended up doing with that one. So you can see what you start off with ends up looking completely different by the time you finished it. And if I go into Procreate, I've got some designs in here which I've developed and put onto backgrounds. So with this one, I went into my multicolour brushes and I picked up Storm Bay, and then I just put in a colour layer. If I put in this layer, you can see what I actually painted over. And this layer, if I turn that one off, again is the actual drawn design. And that's the advantage of doing it digitally. You can mess around with it and you can have several different variations without having to waste a lot of paper. Okay, you can play and create all sorts of effects and things like that. I could also go in with warps and mess around with it in that way. But there are other apps, I'm sure, that will do something similar. If you've got one that does something similar, then use it. So there we go. I hope you found that interesting. Give it a go because it is very relaxing. And I'll see you again soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.